So a couple of weeks ago, we did a video on Andy Stanley and how he uses StoryBrand to craft his messages and uses the StoryBrand formula. Someone suggested that I actually take one of his sermons and slice and dice and dissect it and show where he uses StoryBrand. I think that's a great idea. Let's do that right now.
So here's something to think about and not answer out loud, probably, unless you're with some people you really trust. If your life is a commercial, what are you advertising? Yeah, it's kind of a disturbing question. And I work way ahead on these messages. So there's a couple things in today's message that have sort of just disturbed me in a good way. And this is one of them. If my life is a commercial, if your life is a commercial, and I mean, you've got your temperament, your personality, and your gifts, and your job, and you've got a lot of stuff going on. But when you come to mind, or when I come to mind, when people kind of do the one sentence thing, go, oh, I know Frank, he's, I know Trish, she's, what's, if your life is a commercial, and I guess it's where all of our lives are commercial about something, I wonder what are you advertising? And then I think about what are we collectively advertising, and what is the church advertising? More on that in just a minute.
Don't think for a second this book is about learning to tell your story. In fact, the author argues that telling your story is a great way to go bankrupt. Instead, try inviting customers into a story.
Now, what you see right here is the StoryBrand framework, and we're going to look at several different messages from Andy, and you'll see that though he doesn't follow exactly one following the other, you can definitely put all these together and see that all of these are present and accounted for within his preaching style.
Companies need to understand that the brand is not the hero. The customer is the hero. That's the only way to engage them.
So ask yourself during Andy's teaching, who is the hero of the story?
And the brand's role is to guide the hero successfully through their challenges.
In the story, who is the guide?
Every memorable story is built on a simple framework. A hero has a problem, meets a guide who gives them a plan and calls them to action. Failure would be devastating, but the guide navigates the hero to success. Take any blockbuster movie and you'll see this framework applies.
Here is what might be an uncomfortable question for some of us, and an interesting and maybe even helpful and surprisingly honest question for others of us. When it comes to knowing if there is a God.
Okay, so here we go. Andy's starting off by drawing you into the story. He's inviting you into the story, and you are the character and you have a problem. You're trying to determine if you believe that there is a God. So he's already got your character. He's already giving you the problem. Most of the time, Andy doesn't position himself as the guide, as the sage, as the one that's going to lead you, but is almost assumed like, oh, this person is here. He's on stage to lead me through this. But watch.
And if there is a God, what God is like. And when it comes to trying to figure out who God likes, does it really come down to the Bible tells us so? Or any other religious literature tells us so? I mean, we're modern people, rational people. Are we really expected to believe what we believe, or believe anything, based on a collection of ancient manuscripts written by potentially dozens of men only, who didn't even know each other over the course of hundreds and hundreds of years, in a world without science in the way that we think of modern science, and in a world where everybody believed in the gods or some kind of God? I mean, let's just be honest, all right? Weren't they just making stuff up?
So Andy here is really laying on thick. He's really exacerbating the problem. He's really making it just so bleak. He's laying out the problem. Do we really believe that there's a God? How do we know there's a God? He's really making that case. He really wants to make the case, rather, that is the problem. And how do we fix it? How do we solve this conundrum? Let's continue.
I mean, weren't they just guessing? Weren't they just looking at the, weather patterns and trying to, make sense of something that just didn't make any sense in that time? And along with that, and maybe this is kind of intersects with your life, should we really be surprised That modern people, it seems more and more, are kind of dismissing faith in general or deconstructing their faith, the terminology that we use now. We begin to ask really hard questions or what seem to be hard questions about faith and realize we don't really have answers. And it's not that we're sure that we're right, that religion is wrong, but because we're not sure that religion is right, we just kind of step back and it's like, I'm not sure about that anymore. I mean, should we be surprised more and more people are doing that? Or to make it personal?
Here is an example where I really believe Andy is taking the steps of StoryBrand out of order. So he's really painting a picture like if we don't get this right, if we don't understand if there really is a God, like we're going to deconstruct really the faith. He's almost going to step 7 instead of continuing laying out a framework or a plan. He's going to lay out a plan in a moment, but he's giving you like the consequences of not making a plan now. He doesn't follow, like I said before, he doesn't follow every step one after the other. Sometimes he jumps around, sometimes he alternates, sometimes he doesn't give all of the steps in one sermon. But this one, and we're going to look at another one later where he does lay it out, I think, really clear. But let's continue.
Should we be surprised that perhaps that's where you are, or are you surprised that that's where you are? That maybe you're in the process of walking away, or you just have so many questions, you're starting to lean away, or maybe you're listening or watching today, and honestly, nobody in your family knows this yet, but you have your hand on the doorknob. I mean, you're about to step away and outside of faith, and you're not sure how your family's gonna respond, your friends are gonna respond, maybe even your employer is gonna respond, but you're just kind of leaning that way. And if, all there is to this is the Bible tells us so, then we shouldn't be surprised. And you should be honest with yourself. I mean, if in fact the Christian faith balances precariously on the edge of ancient declarations of superstitious men, well then, why not? Why not?
Right here, I believe Andy is going to position himself as the guru, the brand, the solution finder, the one that has the answers to the problems. He's going to lay it out pretty quickly. So let's keep it going.
But as it turns out, and the reason we're talking about this, and maybe this is new, or maybe this is a reminder, or maybe it's just something you've heard before, but you need to hear it again, or maybe it's the thing you've always believed, but you need some more terminology. The truth is, Christians are not expected to believe what we believe based on a collection of ancient manuscripts written by men who never met each other over the course of hundreds of years in a time when everybody was superstitious and everybody believed in the gods and there was no modern science. That the foundation of our faith, and we talk about this a lot here, the foundation of our faith is far more substantial than that. It's far more sustainable than that. It's even, as we're gonna discover, it's even investigable, which is actually a word.
So we see here, Andy's already laid out who the character is, what is the problem. He has positioned himself as the brand or the one that's going to give the solution. And now he's going to lay out the solution. He already has given what has been the consequences if we don't follow the solution. If we don't do that, what is going to be the problem? What's going to be the outcome of that? So he's already outlined that. So let's continue. Let's go.
I don't like it. I like the word investigatable, but as it turns out, that is not actually a word. And the people who keep me between the lines grammatically said, you can't use your word. You have to use the actual word. So this is it. So the good news is the Christian faith is investigable, which means we are invited to kick the tires.
Here, Andy's going to lay out the plan, and you're going to hear it. It's very non-committal. Kick the tires, try it out, see what you think about it. It's not requiring you to give up your life. It's not requiring you to surrender your own will and machinations and, of course, your sin. None of that. It's just try it out, see what you think about it. 30 days, money back guarantee. That's what he's going to do. So let's continue.
And you're invited to ask those hard questions. And as those of us who are Christians, we don't have to look the other way and shrug and go, I don't know, it's a mystery. As soon as we start talking about faith, we just have to take it by faith, which when you say that, even when you think that there's something on the inside of you that says, you know what, that kind of works for me, but it's not working for my son-in-law, and it's not working for my daughter, and it's not working for the people at work, and it's not working for the people who ask me those hard questions, but it's just what you got. It's what we were raised with. It's, basically what we were told. But the Christian faith does not rise and fall based on the accuracy or the inerrancy of 66 ancient documents that we call books of the Bible. It rises and falls on the identity of a single individual, Jesus of Nazareth.
I believe right here you can see that Andy uses the StoryBrand framework to guide his storytelling. Now, the next one we're going to look at is considerably longer, but we're going to see and hear how Andy does this again. And this one I think is in that complete order. So let's just check it out. You see what you think, and I'll see you in a second.
Do you know who it is virtually impossible not to like? Who it is virtually impossible not to want to be like or to be more like? It's that person who stopped, who went out of their way to help you and didn't expect or require anything from you. They saw you in need, and they saw a need and they just met it. They saw that something needed to be done, and they just stepped up and they did it. And they didn't just walk by and talk themselves out of it. When you have an experience like that, and we've all had those experiences, I hope, you just never forget those folks. I'll tell you one of mine. It's very odd, and I've never told this story before because it's a little long and it's a little odd, but I'm gonna try to take several hours and shrink it down. I was in Florida. I went to an event. I woke up that morning. I didn't want to eat breakfast, so I didn't eat breakfast. I went to the event. It was a half-day event. They provided lunch. The lunch didn't look appetizing, so I didn't eat lunch. So then I went to the airport, and I had a late, early evening flight, and I thought, well, I'll just get some work done. So I worked. Nothing at the airport looked appetizing to me. I was trying to eat healthy. I still do, but this is, by the way, this is like 14 years ago. That's important because it was before Uber, which is important in just a minute in the story. In fact, I think Uber launched the next year, actually. But anyway, so then the flight's delayed because there's bad weather in Atlanta. So I'm in Florida, so we're wait. So the flight's delayed 2 hours. The plane gets there. They said, hey, it's a quick turnaround, and so it's a short flight. So we get on, pull off away from the gate. Bad weather in Atlanta. We sit there 2.5 more hours. So I haven't had breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And I've never had blood sugar problems before, so I didn't really know what was going on in my body. So anyway, we land, I check the bag, I get to baggage claim, and I can't read the screen. It's like totally blurry about where my bag is. So I thought, I'll have my contacts in all day. So I pop my contacts out and put my glasses on, and everything's still kind of blurry. I finally get my bag, get in the little bus thing that takes you out to the hinterland to find my car. Fortunately, I remembered which aisle I was on because I was having a hard time reading my phone. And silly me, it's about 11 o'clock at night. There's hardly anybody out there. I get in my car, I get lost in the parking lot to get out of the parking lot because I can't see. Things are getting blurrier and blurrier. I'm like, what is happening to me? Didn't have any other symptoms. So then I don't advise this, okay? This is probably why I haven't shared the story before. I thought, well, this is gonna get better. So I make my way to the highway. So I'm on 85, I'm going through town, and I'm sweating. I got the windows down, I got the air conditioner on. I keep checking my pulse. Am I having a heart attack? I'm like, what is happening? But it's getting worse and worse. So I've got the flashers on, I'm in the right-hand lane. Is anybody feeling anxiety? I want to get through this quick before I trigger your anxiety. I know but that's why I haven't shared the story before. Anyway, it works out. I'm here. But anyway, so I'm in my Land Cruiser. I had this old Land Cruiser, and I'm in the right lane, flashers on, and I'm praying. And here's what I'm praying, and it's not because I'm a great person, but I was praying, God, please don't let me hurt anybody, because I thought I am about to pass out, and I'm going to wreck my car and hurt somebody. So I'm downtown Atlanta, finally get to an exit. I get off, and this is what I remember. I remember pulling up at the end of the exit ramp, and there's this giant red light in the sky, and I realized that's a red light. My vision is so blurry, it's about this big around, okay? I'm sitting there, I'm trying to, breathe, and I've got all this anxiety. I look over, I see this blurry white and blue kind of neon looking thing. I'm thinking that has to be a Chevron station or some sort of gas station. I take a right and I get in the parking lot. And I've never experienced anything like this. So I'm sitting there thinking, what am I gonna do? I'm downtown Atlanta, so I get out, I go in, I walk to the back of the place, I'm looking for some orange juice, because by now I'm thinking, okay, this has gotta be a blood sugar thing. So this is a place, they don't sell much orange juice, okay? So I wanna be polite, okay? So finally I find something orange juice-ish, And I'm just drinking this stuff, and I realize, I look over, and there's the guy. There's only one guy in there. He works there, and he's behind like this 3-inch bulletproof glass. This is where I am, okay? And he's looking at me like, are you going to pay for that? So I walk over, and I'm like, I'm having a little bit of a medical thing. I think I'm going to be fine. I said, I need you to call my wife. He said, well, we can't use the phone except for business. I'm like, no, I want you to use my phone. I couldn't read my phone. That's how bad it was. So I talk him into it. He calls Sandra, hands it back. I say, honey, I'll be fine. I'm just going to be late. She says, you want me to come get you? I'm like, no, I'm going to figure this out. Then I'd say, and now I need you to call me a cab. He's like, well, we can't. This is just a business. I said, we've covered that. I said, here's my phone, I mean, I was polite, and he was trying, but, he's like, what's this crazy guy? And I'm all dressed up, okay? And it's, it's midnight, and he's wondering what's going on. And he has seen everything, I think. Anyway, so he calls a cab. So I'm waiting, thinking this is going to get better. It's not, it's hard to tell if it's getting better, but I'm not about to get in my car and drive. Okay, that was not an option. So up drives, so I'm outside, and there's so much to this story. People kept asking me for money because I'm all dressed up, and so I'm like, sure, I'm just happy that I'm not driving the car, so give away a little bit of cash. Anyway, so up drives this car, and it wasn't really an actual cab. It's the guy had just stuck something on the top. This is, again, before Uber, okay? And out walks this little Middle Eastern young man, probably in his 20s. And I said, hey, I'd call the cab. I said, hey, this is my car. And I'm trying to explain to him that I shouldn't be driving. And I can tell he thinks I'm drunk. I'm like, I'm not drunk. I said, it's a medical thing. I said, so really, I don't just need a ride home. I need somebody to drive me home. Otherwise, my car is going to be stuck down here, and tomorrow, and I'm trying to just think through the day. And he's kind of looking at me. He says, okay, hold on. I have a friend who can help. So he gets on his phone, and he says, I have a friend in Marietta. Now, for those of you who don't live in the Atlanta area, I'm downtown. I live in a city called Alpharetta. That's one way, and Marietta's a different way, and it's midnight. So he's calling his friend in Marietta, and I'm like, are you sure? He goes, yeah, but he couldn't get him, and he couldn't get him, finally gets him, and he says, okay, he's gonna meet us. If you'll just tell me what exit we get off the highway, he's gonna meet us there, and then he'll just, we'll go to your house, and then he'll drive me back down here. I'm like, really? He said, yeah, man, it's okay. I'm like, are you sure? He goes, oh yeah, it's fine. I'm like, okay, so I give this guy I just met my car key, and I get in the car with him. I get in the passenger seat, he's in the driver's seat, and off we go. And as we're getting on, 85 to head back through the connector, head back through the town, it dawned on me, I've been just so focused on myself. I said, I'm so sorry. What is your name? He said, my name is Muhammad. And I said, well, I'd already told him my name. I said, well, Muhammad, I'm a pastor, and I cannot wait to tell my friends and my wife that I was saved by Muhammad. And he didn't get it. I don't think he got it. I just thought, this is perfect. I'm being saved by Muhammad. So he drives me all the way. So we finally get to the exit. By this time, I can see. I mean, it was terrible. I'd learned later, if you get to that part of blood sugar issues, there's only 2 more levels, and then you're out. So it was bad. But anyway, so we get to the gas station. I said, hey, just pull over right here. Tell your friend to meet us here. And so it took about 30 minutes for his buddy to get there. I mean, they've gone way out of their way for this stranger. So I go into the gas station there at the new exit, the ATM, and I'm going to get out all the money I can to give these guys. I'm so grateful. All I could get was $200, and he didn't even want to take that. He's like, oh, no. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, I can't. I was just so extraordinarily grateful. His buddy shows up. I hug both of them. They're like my best friends. Thank you. You really have, I just felt like they both saved me. And the moral of the story is, when stuff like that happens, I know that's kind of dramatic, you just don't forget people like that, because they came to the rescue. Now, some of you are listening to that story and you're thinking, Andy, that's pretty dramatic, but you know what? I think it might've been better if you hadn't told us the guy was Middle Eastern and his name was Muhammad. You could have left that part off. And if that bothers you a little bit, you're not gonna believe what Jesus says in today's episode of part 4 of Investigating Jesus. Investigating Jesus, how we know and why we.
So you see right there, Andy follows pretty much the StoryBrand framework line upon line. And again, it's only to draw you in. It's not to add really any new understanding to the scriptures. He's going to talk about the story of the the Good Samaritan, he's not going to add any more value to that story at all. He's just highlighting his own story to draw you in, to draw the listener in. And there we go.
God's love doesn't. And this is when Luke just wants to come off the page and grab me by the collar and put his hand behind your head and pull you up close and say, can you believe this? Nobody thought this way. Nobody lived this way. Nobody could even imagine a community like that. Nobody could imagine a world like that.
One of the things about StoryBrand is that it makes not only the customer becomes a hero, but it causes them to imagine a better world. And the only world that is better is the one that buys this product or takes this advice or follows these instructions. Notice what Andy's going to do in this end of this sermon as he wraps up the sermon. Notice how he's bringing it all around, full circle. The only way we're going to have this is by following the instructions that I just gave, following the directions that I just taught.
And Jesus asked this perfect question. And by the time Luke writes his gospel, it's already having ripple effects through Judea and Galilee and Samaria. And the Apostle Paul and others are going to take it to the uttermost parts of the earth. And what was not self-evident in the ancient world is so self-evident to us because of the teaching and the life of Jesus. And somehow Luke knew this is the story that has to outlive me and outlive my generation.
One of the selling points that Andy has is not trying to sell you a product per se, but trying to sell you an idea. And that idea is that you can change the world. The idea that we can make the world better, or that you'll outlive your generation. So as you see, as he's rounding these bases, again, he's really re-emphasizing, if you follow this plan, you will be successful. If you follow this plan, you will achieve this goal that you have in front of you. And the goal, of course, in the beginning was that we don't want to be separatists. We don't want to look at somebody different from a different ethnicity group, which is perfectly true. I agree with that. But he is going to make so much hay about it. It's really interesting. So let's finish this up.
It's the story that had to be told because it was the story for everyone and every generation. Because when you hear the story, you know that if we live that way, the world would change. It would change everything. So back to us. So which one of the three do I think, which one of the three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? Don't answer it out loud or you'll be accountable. But if you want to see God's kingdom come and see God's will be done, if you are a Jesus follower and not just an admirer, Jesus does not need any more admirers. He has plenty of admirers. He has plenty of believers. He needs doers because it's the doers that change the world. It's the doers, not even the prayers, that change the world. You can walk by a wounded man and pray that somebody will stop and help him, and that is not loving the Lord your God. And I know this is challenging, and I know it's like, how far do we take it? And again, we want to justify ourselves. I get it. I want to justify myself. But do you want to change the world? Do you want to change the community? Do you want to see change? It's very simple. Jesus gave us.
Remember in the beginning, Andy gave us the idea that the problem was people were not being welcoming to other people groups and they were being standoffish, so on and so forth, a retelling of the story of the Good Samaritan. Well, now as he's wrapping it up and rounding the bases, he wants to reemphasize that and say, hey, we can change the world. We can change the whole world by following these instructions. By doing this thing is going to change the world. Let's see how he finishes.
To it. You know why there's nothing to it? You're not doing it. You're just believing it or disbelieving it or debating it. But you step into a realm when you see something that needs to be done, do it. And when there's a need you think you can meet, you meet it. And you get in a little deep and a little bit over your head. And suddenly you're praying like never before. And suddenly your faith comes to life like maybe it's never been alive before. This is the life Jesus invites us into. And to live any other kind of life is to simply be religious. You want to see your faith come alive, come back to life? Go. This is Jesus' words, not mine. Go. Do likewise.
Wrapping up the problem, the solution, and what will happen if you don't follow the solution or don't follow the plan that we laid out. That's it right there in front of you. You want your life to keep being miserable? You want your faith to keep being dead? Don't do what I told you to do. If you want to change the world and you want to see the world happier and better and walk in the faith that Jesus wanted you to, do what I told you to do. That's what it is. He's just following the StoryBrand all the way to the end.
Do you know who it is virtually impossible not to like? Do you know who it is virtually impossible not to want to be like? Do you know whose influence it's virtually impossible to resist? Let's be those people. Let's be that person. Let's be the Samaritan. Let's change the world.
And there we go. We wrap it up. Please understand again, who's the hero of this story? You are. Who's a potential hero of the story? You are. Jesus is not the hero. Jesus is not the hero at all. You are the hero, or the listeners, the persons that were in that congregation at that moment. So Andy, again, I hope I've laid this out, that he's not following a biblical preaching model. And I'm not saying that you can't tell stories. I'm not saying that you can't be slightly entertaining even. Definitely not saying that. What I am saying, however, is the focus and the emphasis has to be on the right person, the right character, and the character is Christ. The story of the Good Samaritan, that should be pointing us to Christ, not to us doing more things in order to make the world better, that doesn't even make sense. But again, I think we've laid it out pretty clear. Hopefully you got a lot of good things from this. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Feel free to let me know and give me some feedback, all that. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, everybody, grace and peace.